Yeah. And I've heard it said, and I like to remind people too, conflict does not have to be combat.
Exactly. I tell them, yes,
Don't,
I tell
yeah.
people that all the time. Yes.
It does not need to be combat. And like,
No.
honestly, the thing that the like real mind bender within all of this is that there's always conflict. Like, if you
Always.
invite me to something and I don't want to go, I could be like, oh, well, there's going to be conflict if I say no. But if I say yes, there's still conflict. It's just within me.
Yes. Welcome, Allison, to the Cody Lee Show. Thank you so much for being here. I
Yay.
am so thrilled to have you. And I'm really excited to dive into our topic of boundaries and people pleasing.
Yay.
Yay.
Some of my most favorite topics.
I love it. I love it so much. So I know that you are a coach and you help people with boundaries, boundary work, self-love, using boundaries as a kind of tool, vehicle for self-love. And you especially love working with people pleasers. So
Mm.
tell me a little bit about how you got where you're at.
Yeah, definitely. So I have always been very empathic, very highly sensitive, I felt everything as a little kid. And that turned into just this big time fear of conflict and this fear of being in trouble and this fear of heavy feelings. And like, I felt it so deeply as a little kid that I was like, I just want to keep everything happy all the time. And like, if we just
Yeah,
keep it happy, like it's going to be okay. And I think a lot of people probably relate to that.
I think
Where,
so.
yeah, where we just like learn to fear conflict. We learn to fear, getting yelled at. We learn to fear being in trouble, all of those kinds of things. And that I didn't realize how much that through line continued in my life
Mm-hmm.
until I started like my personal development kind of journey in my late 20s, early 30s. And but like kind of the trajectory of how I got here, I studied psychology and conflict transformation, actually,
Oh, that's
which
awesome.
was a weird choice for me because at this point I was still deeply conflict avoidant. And like, I remember even wearing like a badge of honor, being like, I don't focus on conflict with other people. I focus on inner conflict because I was so scared of conflict with other people.
I love it.
But
I love how your soul was like, no, this is the direction we're going because
we
you need
need
to deal
this.
with this. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I got into it, and it was so fascinating because I ended up learning that if I feel at peace with myself, like if I handle the inner conflict, then I'm so much more prepared to deal with that outer stuff. And so I
Amen.
really like took that kind of away from those studies.
Yeah.
But then got totally lost and like went and got a corporate job for a while and was like,
As we all do. We have that
yeah,
like
I need to go be in
sidetrack.
sales and marketing for a
Right.
little bit. And so
I
I
was
did that. And
I was an apartment manager for a hot
yeah,
minute.
yeah. And it's just like, we like leave our passions for a bit, but they're still there. And mine were so loud when I was in my corporate job. It was just like, I would be sitting at my desk and like making spreadsheets and like eating Panera lunch and would be like, this can't be it. There's more for me.
There
And
has to be more.
yeah. And at that point, I met all of these friends who were weightlifting and like working out at the gym. And I met all these trainers who had this kind of entrepreneurial lifestyle and
Yeah.
were like helping people better their lives. And I was like, I want a piece of that. So then I found the world of coaching, and I things fell into place. I was able to get a coaching certification. And since then, it's been kind of this up and down journey of the last 2.5 years of kind of figuring out who I speak to, what it's about. But it's always like literally, I look at my pictures of whiteboards from like 2017, and they said boundaries and people pleasing,
I
like,
love
and a bunch of
it.
other stuff. And like, so it's always been there, but I
Yeah.
took a bit to like find the precision in it. But it's so
Yeah.
important, and it's like I think back to my little childhood self who like didn't know how to handle conflict, and
Yeah.
I'm like teaching her like it's okay.
It's okay.
You can speak up for yourself. And so yeah, and sharing that message with other people.
I
Yeah.
love that. Well, thank you for sharing that journey. I think the conversation around specifically conflict is so important,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like we avoid hard conversations because
Mm-hmm.
we've set up that conflict equals bad and
Mm-hmm.
avoid, rather
Right.
than conflict equals potential. It's not like conflict is always going to be World War III.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be detrimental. It's
Right.
just going to be uncomfortable. And that's something that we can lean into, not run away from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've heard it said, and I like to remind people too, conflict does not have to be combat.
Exactly. I tell them, yes,
Don't,
I tell
yeah.
people that all the time. Yes.
It does not need to be combat. And like,
No.
honestly, the thing that the like real mind bender within all of this is that there's always conflict. Like, if you
Always.
invite me to something and I don't want to go, I could be like, oh, well, there's going to be conflict if I say no. But if I say yes, there's still conflict. It's just within me. And
Yes.
it's like now I'm
Yes.
like mad at myself, or I'm like feeling resentful of like, oh, I shouldn't have gone. I should have done this stuff. And like it causes a rift anyway. And so it's
Right.
sort of like if you just speak up, like it's so much more authentic for your relationships when you just like don't view the conflict like I see people who are like, oh yeah, we never fight, I have the perfect relationship, we never fight. And like there's part of me that's like, okay, well, you don't have to fight, but like, are you being heard? Like, are
Yeah.
you speaking up, or are you just in this constant like, it's okay, it's fine, it's okay, and like actually feeling unheard? So
Yeah.
conflict can be very important, and like it can be a beautiful tool to have more authentic relationships.
100%. I feel that in all of my relationships. So I hope that people really receive that through this conversation today.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I know that for me, one of the things that I always love focusing on with boundaries is I feel like boundaries start within before they
Mm-hmm.
go outside. But my
Mm-hmm.
question that I really want to like dive in for you is like, from your perspective, what are boundaries and what do they
Mm-hmm.
can kind of consist of?
Yeah, yeah. So I put it very simply, and like not in the standard way. I say that boundaries
Perfect.
are teaching other people how to treat you and teaching yourself how you will be treated.
I love that.
Like that is the point of a boundary. And so yeah, there are types of boundaries like, energetic boundaries or
Yes.
time boundaries or physical boundaries. Like there's all of those kinds of things, but I think it really boils down to teaching someone else like, hey, this is how I will be treated, I will be respected, setting the boundary like I won't be spoken to like that,
Yeah.
teaching this person like, hey, you can't just use me as your punching bag.
And so
And
tell
it's
me,
that,
go ahead.
yeah.
No, no,
Mhm.
go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and then it's also like giving yourself that message too of like
Yeah.
how you deserve to be treated. And that's why, like, not to giving away the like the big thesis of my thoughts about boundaries, but like it's all rooted in that worthiness and like
Mm-hmm.
knowing what you deserve and like speaking up for that and protecting yourself through that. So I really see boundaries as just that, like taking how your soul wants to be recognized and like sharing that with people, teaching them how to treat you, teaching yourself how you'll be treated.
I love that. And for you, why do you feel like healthy, having healthy
Mhm.
boundaries is so important?
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like it's important because yeah, I mean they're challenging. They're hard to set because we sometimes are like, oh, this person has always known me this way, and now I need to like change their perception of me, or I'm gonna, put my foot down and not stand for this anymore. But I think that even though it's challenging is so important because like we were talking about earlier, like those healthy boundaries, speaking up for yourself, that is what will keep the relationship authentic.
Yes.
That is what will like foster healthy communication.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think so often like the way we speak to and about each other is set up in this like very divisive way of like
Yeah.
we're always looking for what's wrong or like criticizing, and it's just like no, 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 that's not the point. Like we want this relationship to be a place where we can talk and we can share. And um like ever since my spouse and I have put different boundaries in place of like deciding whether or not we go to things together, like I'm able to say like, ooh, I feel really energetically depleted today, I'm not going to go along. Like beautiful, that's great, it
Yeah.
works. He like hears that, he receives that and doesn't force it, and then it's like great, I stood up for myself, now I'm chilling on the couch and like doing this while he's like out bike riding with friends. And it's like, great.
Yeah.
I would have hated that bike ride and I would have been mad and I would have ruined it
Miserable.
for everyone for like all day. And so like the healthy boundaries piece is just like, it just, it's so important because it makes relationships just fun in so many ways, because you're not this like second guessing like what are they thinking, are they mad at me, like are they okay, because there's just this natural like we talk to each other, we share things with each other, we
Yep.
communicate what we need. Yeah, those are my thoughts.
And I think the other side, what I'm also hearing in that is there's two sides to boundaries, right? There's the speaking up for yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the owning your part, right? And your
Mm-hmm.
owning your part is twofold. It's owning your worthiness, like you're talking about, but it's also owning, if I do speak up for myself and I'm worried that they're mad at me, that's another opportunity to ask for clarity. And if they really aren't mad at me, then my work is working on that insecurity. So that
Yeah.
kind of, there's like multiple layers, I feel
Yeah.
like, to the boundary work on that side.
Totally. Yeah. I was just working with a client a couple weeks ago who was having a situation where she had to let someone go.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this really intense conversation of like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? We ended up working together after, because she was like, I was in such turmoil because like we had the conversation and then I just replayed it in my head. And like what she was doing is so common for people pleasers. Like, you set the boundary, but then you're replaying like, did I say it right? What are they
Yes.
thinking? Are they mad at me? Is she upset? Is she going to like tell all her friends? Like we play out all these stories, we make all these assumptions. And what I said to her and like what I say to people in that situation is you have to trust the other person to
Mm-hmm.
speak up for themselves.
Yes.
Like if she's upset, it's on
Yes.
her to tell you she's upset.
Yeah.
And like you don't have to sit here in this agony of like assuming she's mad, because she might be like, oh great, this job didn't feel aligned with me and like I got this new position, or
Yeah.
whatever. Like I think so often we just take on this like huh, because the people pleaser empath feeling is like, oh, I want to make everything happy, I want to make sure everyone's okay, I want to be liked.
Yep.
When really it's like that's all external, that's like outside of you and you have no control over that. So like
Yeah.
if that person's mad, trust them to stand up for themselves and like say
Yes,
something
I love
about it.
that. Trust them to stand up for themselves. It
Yeah.
reminds me of when I was going through kind of, because the biggest people pleaser journey that I went through was actually with my mom.
Mm-hmm.
Bless her heart, absolutely love her to death.
Mm-hmm.
But there was a lot of strain in our relationship due to some of the health issues she had, and I kept wanting to make her happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of created this loop of, but her happiness, like nobody's happiness and therefore no one's unhappiness. And that was the hard part for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
No one's happiness and no one's unhappiness is my responsibility.
Yeah.
And that's what I
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
hear in what you're saying, because a
Yeah.
part of the journey for the people pleaser is, yes, standing up for your boundary. And
Mm-hmm.
then also remembering to like trust them, but to also give them their responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And
Totally.
that can be so such a beautiful part of the journey and also challenging.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And before we got on, we were talking about my people pleaser quiz.
Yes.
This like is one of the types that I highlight,
Oh, I
is
love
what I
it.
call the over empath, the
Yeah.
over empathic people pleaser, who's like, I feel your feelings and I'm making myself responsible for them.
Yes.
And I'm making myself responsible for making sure that you're happy. And I'm
Yes.
like taking on this full. And so like that's always where I think like it's like the person who has invited you out for dinner and then is like, are you having a good time? But are you having fun? And like you're doing the next thing and it's like, did they look like they're having fun? Are they having fun? Like you're so hyper concerned about it.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, you're not having any fun because all you're doing is worrying about everybody else. And so there's this piece of the healing of like really seeing yourself as this like whole separate entity and just like trusting like their feelings are their feelings.
And
I
they'll
don't like when people come in and tell me how to feel or how to do
right.
things.
And
And so
also
like,
they're going
yeah,
to share with you when they're ready,
right. Yeah.
however that's going to look.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So tell me, how do boundaries play
Mm-hmm.
into self-love or self-care?
Mm, yeah, yep. So that's actually one of my favorite ways to think of boundaries is I have this very disjointed view of myself, I guess, in some ways. I see myself very much as like a soul who's like having a human experience in this human body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And like with that, I sort of see like, okay, I've got this like meat suit that can talk. And I've got this like divine essence that's like within me. And
Right.
my divine essence can't like put its foot down. It can't speak up. Like I have to use my outer voice for
To
that
to make it
to
happen.
like protect it. And so I really see self-love as just that like, okay, I'm going to use my voice. I'm going to use my body language. I'm going to like use my present experience to protect this soul essence of me, to
Yes.
protect this part of me, my inner child who doesn't have a voice, my like my thoughts, my emotions. I'm going to protect myself in that way. And so I see it deeply as deep self-love of just
Yeah.
this like boundaries are how you show yourself that love.
Mm-hmm.
um because yeah, like you can't, if you need to speak up for yourself, then like setting a boundary is how to do it. And that like along with, teaching yourself how you'll be treated,
Mm-hmm.
it's just that whole piece of like, I am worthy, I am deserving of this. And so, I think back to like actually the self-love piece of boundaries was what like originally got me out of this emotionally abusive relationship I was in,
Yeah.
which I think a lot of people pleasers relate to.
Yes. Hello.
Narcissists,
Been
toxic
there,
folks
done that.
come on in, and like people pleasers are like, I'm still gonna try to make you happy even though you treat me terribly.
Even though I'm in a
Yeah,
this is a terrible idea.
yeah, and I remember just like this person just saying things to me, making me feel this certain way, and me being like, just all of a sudden having this like, what? Like, no, you can't talk to me that way. And just
Yeah.
this like righteous anger of like, no, I'm deserving of better and like I'm worthy of it. And so, the self-love piece, like I think that's, if you're struggling to set a boundary, like tuning into the self-love and thinking like, this is deeply loving to me. This is an act of self-protection.
Yeah.
This is what I need to be, you know, more authentic in this relationship.
Yes.
And so that's really like, I totally see it as self-love.
And I feel like in this, there's a strong piece that I kind of like want to include because
Mm-hmm.
I experienced the same thing. And with that partner that I was with, it was a slow manipulation where like
Right.
it snuck up on me. And I'm a strong, independent woman, raised by a
Right.
strong, independent woman. So I was like, "Oh, what?
Yeah.
How did that happen?" Like, huh, he was good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But also one of the things that I kept having to face, and I kind of faced it a little bit with my mom too, was when you're stepping into boundaries, when you're claiming your worthiness, when you're standing up for yourself, and you start to realize it is an act of self-love,
Mm-hmm.
somebody will inevitably throw that awful, awful word in your face.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know what it is. You're being selfish.
Yeah.
And that would like almost tear me down, right? Because I'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm working so hard to take care of myself. Why can't you see?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not their job
Mm-hmm.
to see your worth. Your
Mm-hmm.
job is to see your worth and to stand up for it, because for whatever reason, either narcissistic or unhealthy or bad behavior or whatever, they're in a position where they can't. So how do you kind of like, what are your thoughts around facing that? Because I feel like that's something that can help you knock you off, weaken your boundaries, if you will.
Totally. Yeah. So I have many thoughts about selfishness.
Oh, please. You and me
One,
both, girl.
yeah. One, I kind of at the core like believe selfishness is a lie. Like I don't think it's possible to be selfish. Like I truly, I mean, I think it's possible to be self-serving and like it's possible to like
Be self-centered.
yeah, to be self-centered in a lot of ways, but like I think the whole selfish idea of like, oh, you're too focused on yourself, oh, you're like just looking out for number one, like there's part of me that's like, who else am I supposed to look out for? Like, who else am I supposed to be like constantly thinking about? Who else am I
Yeah.
supposed to be like
I'm
obsessed with?
I'm the only one that's with me 24/7, 7 days a week,
Right.
365 days of the year for the entire time of my life.
For sure. Like, I'm gonna watch out for me. And so I also like another thought I have is personally, I turn it around. If somebody tells me I'm being selfish, like I kind of see them as being selfish because
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, you are telling me to go against what I desire to come around to your way.
Yes.
Isn't that selfish?
Yes.
Like, you are trying to guilt me by telling me that I'm being selfish, so I go along with what you're asking me to do,
Right.
which feels pretty selfish.
It
So,
feels pretty manipulative.
yeah, and so there's that piece that I kind of see there, but I this is actually a huge breakthrough I had in EMDR. Because I had kind of gotten this message. I was a pretty talkative kid, pretty bubbly, pretty out there, very people pleaser, big time teacher's pet, like, and just like really let myself be in the spotlight. My
Yeah.
Venus is Leo. I love being seen and celebrated
I love it.
and like worshiped. And I remember getting the feedback from an adult in my life while I was growing up, like, oh, let the other kids have some attention. Like, oh, you're being too big and too gregarious and you're like drawing too much attention to yourself. And like, can't you let these other kids, have a chance?
Mm.
And I did like rounds and rounds of EMDR like therapy with that and like rewriting that belief because I was just like, how do I contend with this? Like, I want to live my life boldly,
Yeah.
but I don't want to be seen as selfish. And
Yeah.
so I ended up having this mindset shift that it's not selfish, it's altruistic to
Mm-hmm.
be bold. It's altruistic to stand up for myself because I'm showing people that there is like I'm giving that permission to say like you want to dye your hair purple? My hair's not purple at the moment, but typically it is. It's fading. I have an appointment next week.
I
But
love
like
it.
if you want to have hot pink hair, have hot pink hair.
Yeah.
If you want to like, travel and like be a digital nomad, like go for it. If you want to like do this, like don't get caught up in like the worries of all of it and like, oh, well, people think what. Like
Yeah.
I see it as altruistic in this just sense of like you're showing people what's possible. You're showing people that they can stand up for themselves. And I feel almost like the rubber band was pulled so far, especially for like I'm a millennial. I think you're probably a millennial too.
I
Like
think so
probably a
too.
bunch of millennial listeners, all of that. But I feel like there was so much narrative around like trying to fit in, like hating your body, like, oh, you need to get smaller, oh, you need to be whatever. Like there was all this just effort by, big corporations and all of that to get us to not like ourselves
Yeah.
and like to question everything. And so now I sort of see it as like, no, 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 like let's bring the rubber band the other way and like bounce back and into the self-love. And so also with that too, I'll say, well, I'll maybe talk about that later with like self-talky kind of stuff, but like, well, I'll say it now. Like
Yeah.
if
Say it now.
yeah, because I'll probably forget to come back to it. But like
Exactly.
if this idea of self-love and like having just this self-talk that's like, I'm the best, I'm gonna watch out for myself all the time, like I can do anything, like if that feels too far, like you can even just bring your self-talk to neutral because
Yeah,
a lot of people's self-talk is pretty deprecating. And it's
exactly.
like
It's really
maybe
bordering on self-abuse.
right.
Like if
Yeah.
we're
And so
honest.
yeah, so true. Like when I ask people, I did this thing on LinkedIn the other day where I posted and I was like, what would the situation be like if somebody printed out your internal dialogue and like made you read it out loud
Oh my God, so
in
true.
front of a group of people? Like what would those people think about how you talk to yourself?
Yeah.
But like if on that point, like if it feels like, oh man, I can't walk into this and be like, I'm the greatest thing that's ever existed and everybody is like lucky to know me. Like I think that way. But if that feels too far, at least come out of that like self-deprecating, self-abuse place and
Yeah.
just be like, I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah.
Or I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Or I'm deserving of love. Like
Just the next step, the
just
next
the
step
next
up.
step.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can get
It'll,
more lavish in your brain as
it'll help lift you out. And then you can go to the next step and the next
for
step.
sure. For sure.
But something you said, I really want clarity on it because I'm fascinated by it. I'm going to tell you about it in a minute. You said that you realized that like being selfish was altruistic. So I want to understand from your perspective, like what does altruism and being altruistic mean? Because I love
Yeah,
playing with the definitions of words.
for sure.
So I want to hear from like you,
Yeah,
what's your
yeah,
experience of it?
totally. So altruism, I remember I was in a psychology class once where we had to debate against each other whether or not true altruism existed.
Yeah.
And it was so fascinating. But the way that I kind of see it is like, I believe true altruism does exist in this sense, in that like it's about just like serving others with no self-service at all.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I sort of see it. I have this very interconnected view of the world, whereas
Love it.
I see like if good things happen to you, like cool. That's sort of like a good thing happened to me because we're all humans, we're all coaches, we're all, whatever, like rising tides lifting all boats.
Yeah.
Great for the greater consciousness. And so like I sort of see that as altruism, as like I'm not like, oh, I'm gonna be, a really bold person so that everybody like
Right.
compliments me on my energy and everybody like tells me, how much they enjoy me. Like it's not that. It's more this altruism of like I desire to be bold and live in my truth so that other people can see that and that more people can rise up and live in their truth.
Yeah.
So it's not in this selfish like ego level of like I want the attention. I want people to praise me. I want to go down in history. I want like all this. It's not that. Like maybe parts of my ego are like, "Ooh, yeah, I love that." But like by and large, I do see like and what I'm going for with the altruism piece is like it's not about me, it's about like the greater good and the
Right.
greater collective. And like I think the more people that stop people pleasing and set boundaries and like love themselves, like that's good for all of us.
I
Because that's
love that so much.
yeah. So that's
The
what I
reason
mean.
the reason I actually bring that up is so part of what I kind of talk about on my podcast and just in general and have a passion for is human design and gene keys. But
Mm-hmm.
you bring up this whole topic of like, and I think it's an important part of boundaries. The 27th gene key, which happens to be my life's purpose in the gene keys,
Mm-hmm.
they break it down into shadow, gift, and then highest frequency, which is called the city, right? And what's interesting is the shadow is selfishness,
Mm-hmm.
the gift is selflessness, and then the highest frequency is altruism. And so it's really funny that you brought that up because I was like, oh my gosh, you just nailed, like you just embodied and expressed fully that gene key. And I just want to say thank you because I've been working with that gene key for years and nobody has brought altruism into an embodied state for me to really fully see it and understand it the way that you just did. So that was my like side note of like,
You.
that was really cool. I really appreciate that.
You're so welcome.
And I believe that that's an important part of the discussion with boundaries and with self-care because it's like, boundaries are in greatest service to the collective
Mm-hmm.
because they allow us to treat others with respect.
Mm-hmm.
And they allow us, like you were saying, to treat ourselves and to teach ourselves what respect is.
Mm-hmm.
So what I also want to kind of like explore a little bit are what are some of the cycles that can weaken our boundaries and or
Mhm.
like the red flags that people pleasers
Mm,
should kind of be aware of?
yeah, totally. Totally. So I see people pleasing, and also I just want to say I love that I was able to embody that for
Oh my
you.
gosh, it was
That
so
feels like
good. It was
altruism.
so
I didn't come here
amazing.
with that intention, but it
No,
happened.
no, no. But it was the magic. It's the magic of
Yeah,
what
it's
comes
the
through. I
magic.
love it.
So that's so incredible. And I love, yeah, somebody was just talking to you about gene keys yesterday. And so I'm like, okay, I need to go read more and learn more.
We'll have a
Um,
talk later about all the
yep,
things Gene
I
Keys.
love it. So the cycles though that I see that we get into, so I really see the people pleasing and boundaries like as this sort of perpetual cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really rooted in something that like there's a little bit of research around it. This one like communications professor came up with this idea called emotophobia, which is kind of
Oh,
the fear
like your
of,
fear of emoting.
yeah, fear of negative emotions specifically.
You know what? So
Yeah.
many people, so many
Yeah.
people.
And it's
Yes.
like exactly what I was talking about earlier with my childhood self who didn't learn how to handle conflict. Like I learned emotophobia. I was like, nope, I'm scared of negative emotions. I'm just going to keep everything happy all the time.
I love
And
it.
like
Yeah.
we have that kind of script playing in the background of just this kind of like unknown fear. And so we get into what I call defensive people pleasing, where it's like,
Yes.
I'm going to do something nice so that you are nice to me. Like I'm
Yes.
going to just like go out of my way to keep anything bad from happening. And that just kind of keeps this cycle of like, okay, so I'm people pleasing. I'm scared something bad's going to happen. So I don't set a boundary. And then I don't set a boundary. And I feel conflict within myself. And I'm scared of, this person feeling that. So I people please. And since I'm people pleasing, I'm not setting the boundaries. And like we get wrapped in this kind of cycle.
Yeah.
Um, and in terms of the red flags, so these I really see as being connected to a lot of the like people pleasing types that I talk
Mm-hmm.
about.
Yeah.
Um, and so like for example, one like big red flag I see with boundaries, this is kind of a self boundary, and this has to do with like the self-doubting people pleaser who's really caught in that imposter syndrome stage. And the red flag I would raise is like if you are constantly researching or like asking other people for their input, or like if you don't trust your own intuition, your own thoughts, your own decisions, and you're just like I think there is maybe need to set a boundary there with yourself of like I can see what comes through for me, or like I'm smart enough to figure this out on my own.
Yes.
And like sometimes you can get in that place, like you can get really talked into things. And that's sort of where I see, like you were talking about kind of that slow burn in this
Yes.
relationship where it's like
Yes.
push a little further and then a little further and
They're
then a
real
little further.
sneaky. Real sneaky
Yeah.
about it.
And like the self-doubt piece, like if you're questioning yourself, and like oftentimes real good narcissists know how to make you question yourself and like
Yes.
feed into that. And so it's sort of that like if you find yourself being in this place of like, oh, I need to always ask other people for their input, I need to always run this by someone, like I think that's a real red flag to kind of tune into your like personal boundaries of like, wait, no, I want to believe that I can figure things out on my own.
Right.
So that's one that I see.
I love that. That's a really
Yeah.
good one. I feel like when I was kind of in recover, when I was in the journey of recovery from people pleasing,
Mm-hmm.
one of my big moments was exactly like you were saying, realizing that I'm giving my personal power away when I'm
Mm-hmm.
asking everyone else their opinion or their thoughts
Mm-hmm.
on how I should make a decision
Right.
before I ask myself.
Right.
And so
Right.
it was kind of like realizing like the asking of other people isn't the problem.
Right.
It's the asking of other people without ever asking myself.
Right. Yeah. And if you're tuning into like, oh, and because sometimes there's like unspoken thoughts connected to that of like, okay, I'm not asking myself, oh, because I'm not smart enough to figure it out.
Yes.
Oh, because
I'm
everybody
not
else will know better.
I'm not
Or
good
like,
enough. I don't
yeah,
have the answer. I don't know the answer to this, even though it's like something you absolutely 100% know the answer
right.
to.
Or like you can like, and I think there's a lot of narrative too out there, especially in the coaching world of like, oh, well, you have to do it the right way. And you have to
Yeah,
like
there is
do
no.
like there's totally that. And there's this sort of like the right way for you might be different than the right way for me. And like everybody has
Yes.
their own right way. But yeah. Another one, I would love to mention this other one
Please,
too.
please. Yes.
It's really around this idea of like saying yes to everything,
Hmm.
because I feel like that's a big thing that happens for people pleasers, and a lot of times I end up talking to people who are like they show up to me because they're burnt out from the people pleasing,
Yes.
because they say yes to everything. And so this red flag, like I sort of see it like it's sort of, it feels good, just like looking things up and researching. Like it feels good because we feel like, oh, I'm learning, I'm doing great. And this one I see it as kind of like, oh, it feels great. I'm so helpful. I'm always helping my friends and family. I'm
Yeah.
always there. I would drop anything for them. Like we get that message of like, that's how we're supposed to be. You're supposed to, give the shirt off your back. And like, as a little kid, you get celebrated for helping out and all of that stuff. But like there is this piece of like if you do really feel like you want to say no but you feel like you're not allowed to,
Yeah.
like tune into that allowed piece, and tune into like you can set the boundary. Like that's what I see as kind of the overachieving type of people pleaser who's
Yes.
like, I need to just like go into everything. Or if they do say no to something, then they like way over explain why they
Yes.
have to say no. Because they're like, I need to convince you. I need you to like understand. And so I really see this kind of like red flag of like, if you just notice that you have a really hard time saying no to people, or you find yourself just like feeling like you never have a chance to get around to what you desire doing,
Yeah.
this is a place where you can set that boundary. And like I think this is a deep place of self-love,
Yeah.
um, for you to just like do what you feel like you're here to do. Like
Yeah.
I think of this a lot, and I had to contend with this early on when I was first an entrepreneur and working from home. I would have people in my life who were like, "Oh, well, you work from home, so like we can get together on Thursday morning, or we can meet like here, or like you can just come over and help me in the middle of the day, or like obviously you can go do this thing." And I really like at first I was like, yes, yes, I need to say yes. I need to say yes. I'm not allowed
Yes.
to say no. They are going to think I'm a bad person if I say no. And it
Right.
was just like I was not showing up for my business. I was not showing up. I wasn't putting my foot down in that self-loving way of like, no, I deserve to take time to do what I want to do.
Yeah.
And so I kind of see that as a big connection there too, of like if you're in that place of just constantly feeling like, oh my gosh, I've been trying to steal a second for myself for like 3 months now, like take a
Then
second.
maybe we need to work in more no's. No,
Yeah, work in the no. And like a thing
no
I say there,
is a very loving thing.
yeah. And I always say to people too, like, don't make a yes to someone else a no to yourself.
Yes.
Like,
Yep.
always check in. If I'm saying yes to this, is this a no to myself in any way? Okay. That'll tell me whether or not I gotta say yes,
I
or if
love
I
it.
say no. So
I
yeah,
love
those
that so
two.
much. Yeah, that's a really, I mean, I feel like so many people get caught in just saying yes
Oh yeah.
and never realizing that no is can be a part of their vocabulary.
Totally. Totally.
Or sometimes, and I feel like I work with clients like this too, where it's like, it was a yes last week when I said yes.
Mm,
And today it's a no, because
mhm,
kind of like you brought up earlier, where you're like, you came home and you're with your
mhm,
husband and you had plans, but like you're exhausted, you've had a long day. The answer today, the answer right now is no.
mhm.
That's okay too. So
Yeah.
I always try and tell people like, let's play with the idea. Let's kind of like relearn that yes is a yes for right now and no is
Mhm,
a no for right now.
mhm. Mm.
It's not
Yes.
a forever.
Totally. Totally. And I think, yeah, like that's, you can always change your mind. You can always honor and protect your energy and like speak up for what you need in the moment.
Yeah.
True.
Well, I know that you talk a little bit like on the work that you do on the social, on Instagram about the wild woman.
Ooh, yes.
So I really wanted to dive into it because I feel like, you know, if we don't want to be people pleasers, what is it that we want to embody?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I love how you kind of have captured this with the idea of the wild woman. So what does a wild woman mean to you?
Yeah, love this question. And it's something that I found I had to do some clarification around once I started talking to people. It was like a market research thing where I was like, obviously everybody wants to be a wild woman. And then I was talking to people and they're like, wild feels kind of scary.
Yeah.
Like wild feels really intense. And so this is the way I like to describe it. Like I like envision myself as this wolf, just like, tracking through the woods. And I notice like, okay, I'm hearing water over there. I'm smelling stuff. I'm like hyper aware and like, I'm not concerned about anything. I'm just like hyper aware and like in my power walking through the woods. And like, that's the kind of wildness I see of like, it's not this, untamed horse
Right.
running like that you're trying to contain. Like I sort of see wildness as just this like beautiful confidence, this like preparedness, this like
Yeah.
I'm ready for battle kind of energy.
Can
And so,
I love this so much. Can I also give another perspective on wild,
yeah,
especially wild women?
totally.
So I relate to this, but I relate to it in a completely different way. And this is
Mm-hmm.
why I love playing with it because words are so powerful. I relate
Mm-hmm.
to being a wild woman like a wildflower
Ooh.
because
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't ask for permission to grow. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
ask for permission to be beautiful. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't, say, oh, I need you to recognize me in order to blossom, in order to be what it wants to be. And it
Mm-hmm.
is going to thrive in
Mm-hmm.
even the most challenging of circumstances.
Ooh.
So
Yeah.
for me, that like idea of being a wild woman, and that's where I love like yours is the wolf, and I think every woman can have that experience of like mine is a little softer. It's a wildflower like moving in the
Mm-hmm.
wind, right? But
Mm-hmm.
there's so much power in even the softness, as much
Yeah.
as there's power in being the wolf or the authentic creature that is just
Yeah.
fully present in themselves.
Yeah.
So I just like I wanted to share that
Mm-hmm.
because I think that that's such a cool. I think if more women understand that we can
Yeah.
reclaim wild, doesn't
Yeah.
have to be a bad thing.
Right, totally. And that's always like I love that kind of definition of it. Of it is
Mhm.
like she's not asking permission to grow. She's not even asking you to like observe her beauty. She's
No,
growing on the side of a mountain that nobody's
I'm
ever going to
we're
climb.
doing the thing. I'm
Like,
headed to the sun. I'm shining bright.
yeah, she's living life. And I think that's so beautiful. And that really is like the essence that I talk about to people with the wild woman is like, yeah, she's confident in her worthiness, whether or not anybody else is involved. She can state her boundaries without this ego interplay of like, oh, what are they thinking? Are they like,
Yes.
do they think I'm
Second
doing it right?
guessing and
Yeah,
yes.
like none of that. Like she's just like, no, I know what I need. I've got myself. Like, I really see her as just knowing why her boundaries exist and just like tuning into that.
Yeah.
um and like feeling that self-love of like I'm protecting myself, I'm standing up for myself, I know why I have to do this. And like I also kind of the wildness thing started for me too back when I lived in San Francisco. I was a mindset coach for this women's self-defense group,
Ooh,
and
that's
we would
fun.
do, yeah, it was super fun. It was called the Fearless Movement.
Ooh, love
And
it.
yeah, we would do, there were two women on the group in the group who were black belts in jujitsu and various martial arts. And so they would do a lot of the physical self-defense. But we always started with the verbal piece. And I always did a mindset piece to kind of get us ready for the verbal piece. Um, because when you first ask someone to like put their hands up and say, stop, back up, like it comes out very small. It comes out like,
Yeah.
stop. And like they don't trust themselves yet.
Please
And I,
stop. Please, can you please stop? Like,
yeah,
can I
yeah. And
please?
so there's this piece. And like I remember watching this one woman like it changed. And I was like the person like approaching her, and I was like, whoa. And I was like, she just roared. Like that woman found her roar. She like, holy cow. Like, I'm not gonna mess with her. And
That's
like
amazing.
I think of that because it's not just, the person that's coming to you on the street. It's like also the way we speak to ourselves, also the other little like silent things that happen within us, that we kind of attack ourselves and beat ourselves down with.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's really that, just like remembering that ability to roar and like stand up. And so I do this exercise with people often where I have them tune into a boundary that they would
Mm-hmm.
have no problem protecting. And a lot of people are like, okay, what is that? What is that? And I'm like, well, if you're out for a walk with your dog and someone comes up and kicks your dog, you're going to say something.
Right.
If someone like pushes your kid over, you're going to say something. Like,
Right.
there are times where like you will be filled with that righteous anger of like, hey, like, cut it out. Like, this is not okay.
Absolutely not. You will not do
Absolutely
that.
not. Yeah. And so I always help people like tune into like, that is that like wild confidence within you that is able to just like come out and will come out when necessary. And so if you're in this place where you just like need to set a boundary, like I love helping people tune into that, like, okay, I'm my wild self. I'm my like wild, confident self right now. I'm not,
The
this
meek
pretty,
little one
pristine
that's
little thing. I'm
yes.
roaring. So
I'm
that's
not
kind of my take on wild
I'm
women.
not meek mouse today. I'm
Yeah.
wild woman.
Yes. And also, I love the book Women Who Run with the Wolves
Yeah.
deeply. Yeah.
Such a good
I've
one.
got it's in multiple of my like headshots. I'm like, don't mind me, just reading this book always. And so I really do like, I also take a lot of it there of like this divine feminine, like powerful creator,
Yes.
like nurturing, protective mother kind of energy too.
Yeah.
And so I find it easier for people sometimes to like embody that if they're first learning how to set boundaries. And so that's what I use the wild woman for, is
I
like,
love
let's
it.
feel that in you.
Let's step into that. I love that. That's so perfect.
Mhm. And also I weightlift a lot too. So I like,
I love it.
it just
Same.
makes me feel extra strong.
Yeah. Weightlifting is I haven't been able to do it in a while, so it's coming back into my life because I'm
Mhm.
like I miss it.
Mhm.
But I do other things, so that's okay.
Mhm.
How does like for me, and I think hopefully for the viewers, if they're wanting to step into or embody
Mhm.
being the wild woman so that they can
Mhm.
maybe, roar with their boundaries a little better,
Mhm.
how maybe like what's like one suggestion of how they can
Mhm.
cultivate the safety within
Mm.
themselves to
Mm.
experience their own inner
Yeah.
wild woman?
I love this question. And part of the reason I love this question is because I have found the answer for me.
I love
And
it.
and like what I share with people, and like what I say there is like, you need a pack. You need a place to be supported. You
Yep.
need that like powerful, like I have multiple friend groups, people in my life where like I can go to them and I can say, I put my foot down in this situation, or like, I'm feeling really uncertain about this, or like, I can kind of be seen and held in my tenderness.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't feel so alone if I'm like out there and I'm like, you know, somebody's pushing my boundaries or like pushing back against me. I know that I'll have people to like hype me back up, or people to like
Yeah.
support me, people to listen to me.
Yeah.
And so I always feel like that is what I see as the most important, like the place where you can be celebrated. Like, because that will help you feel safe. And so, even within yourself, like just like journaling, writing to yourself, like letting yourself know, like, this is why I did what I did. This is like, I am going to write down and like take these thoughts out of my brain, because, people pleasers, we want to play it over. We want to like look at it from every angle. But like, you can experience that safety of being in your wildness if you're just like, I know why I did that. I stood
Yeah.
up for myself. And like, then if it keeps coming back and days later, like you can read to yourself, like, I was doing what was best for my family in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, I was doing what I felt I needed to. And then even better, if you have like a friend group or people in your life or someone you can call that can be like seeing you in that and honoring you in that and just like celebrating you in that and being like, oh my
Yes.
gosh, so proud of you for standing up for yourself, or like,
Yeah.
so proud of you for not getting talked into something.
Yes.
And having those people around you, it's just like, oh, thank you. I can be I can be strong, and I can also be like tender and held and supported. Because yeah, it's sometimes I do find that there is like an after of like, okay,
Yeah.
I put my foot down, I did the
The
thing, I
little bit
had
of
the conversation.
little bit of a hangover sometimes.
Yeah, definitely. And I provide that for my clients where I'm like, okay, you had the conversation, like, let's do some breath work, let's like send some love, let's like calm back in.
Let's
And I
ground.
think,
Let's do the
yeah,
thing.
having those people to do that for you and just like be there and be like, you know what, the sun shines out your eyeballs no matter what. Like, I will love you no matter what, like that
No matter
unconditional
what.
love. So
I
that's
I
what
think I think that's really, such good advice, even
Mhm.
just for anyone. Just like
Mhm.
if you don't have that group, that pack, like you said,
Mhm.
that you can turn to, that's gonna celebrate you
Mhm.
and celebrate
Mhm.
with you and get
Yeah.
that, because
Yeah,
that's a game changer.
totally.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, because if
Well,
you like are in that situation where you're like second guessing yourself and you talk to somebody and they're like, well, that was kind of like, you don't need that. You don't need that at all.
no,
Find yourself some
no.
supportive people who are like there to lift you up. And yeah, it's just so powerful. And I'm so grateful that I've like found people in my life, and
Yeah.
definitely encourage it for everyone.
Same. Well, I know that I took your quiz. So I know you have this
Mhm.
amazing quiz, the people pleaser quiz.
Yeah.
To find out what kind of type of people pleaser you are.
Yeah.
And I know you kind of talked about one of the types already. I'm going to toot my own horn because I'm very proud of myself. I've officially made it to the recovering people pleaser status.
Yay! That is one of the options. I added that because I was like, you know what? There are people out there who have recovered. And
Yes. Like
honor
I knew I was a people pleaser. And it
it.
was funny because I wasn't a people pleaser necessarily in all aspects of my life. Like I
Hmm.
could really stand up for myself in at work. But when
Hmm.
it came to my family or when it came to my love life, that just nope.
Hmm. Hmm. So
So,
good.
it was a journey in kind of unraveling that. But I really enjoyed taking the quiz. So I just want to encourage anybody out there listening, go take that quiz. You can go do it at poppylead, poppylead.com/quiz. And you can go find out what kind of people pleaser you are and share with us. Let us know what kind of people
Yeah,
pleaser you
I'm
are.
so
Like,
curious. Tag me in your stories with your
yes.
results. And yeah, if you sign up for like to get the emails after it, I do include this beautiful healing your people pleasing at the deepest level meditation as well.
Love it.
That's like it's like 15, 17 minutes long. It's like deep and healing. I like do some Reiki in it if you're like open to receiving that. So
Yeah.
check out that if you're also like, okay, now I know I'm this
Yes.
type. What do I do? There's a
Yes,
little quiz
please.
action. And yeah, stay connected. And I want to see what kind of people pleasers people are.
Yeah. So if you want to get to know more about Allison, you can, connect with her. She's on LinkedIn. She's on Instagram. Her website is poppylead, poppylead.com.
Mhm.
And I'll leave all of the extra stuff down below so you can connect with her. But oh my gosh, Allison, thank you so much for being here.
Yay, this was so fun.
It was. I'm so grateful just to have connected with you and that you reached out. And also, I really hope that people pleasers out there in the world get some support and, step into recovery, if you will. Please.
Definitely.
All right. Thank
Well,
you all
thank you
so
so much.
much. Have a great day.